Hi, everyone.
You're so clear.
Thank you everyone for joining. While we wait for just a few more people to enter the space, on your screen, I put a little prompt for everyone to introduce yourselves because we won't be able to introduce everyone all together. So if you wouldn't mind just putting in the chat your name, your pronouns, where you're located, and if you know the indigenous territories that you're located, you could put that as well. And then your favorite farmers market item, and that could be food or drink or an item or anything like that.
All right, we'll give people just a couple more minutes to log in here. Cheese, always cheese. I love that, Sarah. Great.
Thank you, everyone. I love seeing where everyone's coming from. I just realized you guys can see everything that I'm doing. Hi, Leah. Hey, Christy, Sam and Jules. And Susan. How could I forget you? Oh my gosh. I think we're just going to give it just a few more minutes to let people trickle in. We do have an hour of time, so.
I think I do.
So excited to see so many familiar faces in here. All right, so we're just letting people trickle in, and if you're just joining us, welcome and thank you for being here. I got a little prompt started for everyone because unfortunately we won't be able to introduce everyone in this conversation. So if you would like to, please in the chat put your name and your pronouns and the the Indigenous territory that you're located on if you're familiar with it, and what your favorite farmer's market item is. And I think we're going to get going here soon. Are we ready, Christy?
Yeah, you ready? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Christy from Calypso Farm. And thank you all so much for joining us. This is our first community presentation in our Conversations series. We're co-hosting this with the Folk School here in Fairbanks. We're so happy to have Mel here with us tonight, Melanie Edwards, and she is coming to us all the way from Whidbey Island, Washington. Right after Mel's presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. And you can either raise your hand, the little raise your hand feature on Zoom, or you can type your question into the chat. And I can help Mel make sure she's seeing the questions and able to answer everybody's questions. And so Mel's going to tell us her story as a first-generation Black farmer. She is an experienced farm manager and more recently has been doing variety trials and seed growing. She's also been growing plants for natural dyeing and dyeing and spinning wool. So excited to hear your story, Mel.
Thank you, Christy. And again, thank you everyone for being here today. I hope that this is coming through clear. Christy, can you see this bar up here on my screen?
I think so.
Like this one that says how many participants and things like that? Can I make this go away?
Oh, I guess I can't see that.
Okay, well, that's good. Perfect. All right. I just want to thank Calypso Farm and the Folk School for hosting this today. And I would like to begin by acknowledging the communities and nations whose land my work is taking place on. And I invite all participants to consider where their own work and their life takes place. And for me, this includes the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Skagit, Snohomish, Clallam, Lukhootseed, and many other Indigenous communities and persons from across Whidbey Island who meet here. It is important to me to ground this gathering in the recognition of historical and ongoing process of colonization. And if you're not familiar with the Indigenous lands that you might be occupying, whether in your personal life or in your work, here in the on this first slide, there is a website, and it's called nativeland.ca, and it allows you to see what territories might be around you. And I encourage you all to utilize that tool as we move forward in our journey of recognizing who came before us on stewarding different lands. All right, Conversations with Melanie. For those of you that know me, know that my name is spelled Melon with the Y. I like to think that my name actually had a direct correlation with my path into food and farming. So when you think of me, think of fruits. And today's conversation, what I'm going to talk about really is just my story and my journey, and specifically what it looks like, what a farmer looks like. And I came up with that because I often get put in this category of I don't look like a farmer. And for many of us, what a farmer looks like is a white male with that's all bearded and in a pair of flannels with maybe a pitchfork and a hat. So I'm just here to say that not all farmers fit that typical stereotype, and that there is a great diversity within the farming community. And I just want to share my story with you all. And this is just a brief, my brief bio. And so I generally say that I'm a first generation farmer, but I actually just learned in 2019 that I'm not a first generation farmer. It turns out that on my paternal family side, my ancestors were they were slaves and then eventually became emancipated and owned their own land, or sharecroppers. And that land is in the South in Tupelo, Mississippi, and there are still family members that steward that land today. And so really what I am is I'm a first generation farmer of my ancestors who traveled north after the Great Depression, after the Great Migration. And so here I am now reclaiming my farming roots and just learning what it's like to be a farmer in today's society. And I also have a background in culinary arts, and I'm going to go through this a little bit more. And my background in culinary arts helped lead me to my path of farming. And I just really wanted to know more about where our food came from, which is how I ended up becoming a farmer. So I mentioned that I went to culinary school. So after high school, I went to culinary school in Portland, Oregon. I then got another degree in hospitality and restaurant management in Miami. And I have opened restaurants for celebrity chefs. I've worked in five-star, fine dining operations. I have worked on cruise ships. I've done like all facets of food service that you can think of. And it's been a really, really great experience. But during my journey of working with food, I started asking more questions. So I would ask my chef, where does this food come from? And they would say Cisco. And I'm like, well, where does Cisco get their food from? And so I really just had a lot of questions about food. Another thing that they teach you in culinary school is to use seasonal items. And so, how do you understand what seasonality is when you are so out of touch with food and how it grows? And I would find myself at the farmers market in like May, and I would say, I'm looking for tomatoes, and all the farmers would laugh at me and be like, there's no tomatoes here. And I was like, but it's summertime. And so just really trying to understand what seasonality meant, I had to dive a little bit deeper. Before my path to farming, I worked in the wonderful corporate America. I worked for companies like Amazon and Boeing. They all have food service management companies that are run by a company called Compass Group. And many of you may have experienced them in your different working lives. If you're in a school, it's usually called Chartwells. If you're in a hospital, it's called Morrison. And then a lot of different corporate facilities use this company under either the name of like Urist or Bon Appetit. So they're a global organization that's all over and many different avenues of food service. And I was working at Boeing, and it was a really great job, but I was working like 7 days a week. I was on call 24 hours a day. And I really just started, wondering, I was like, this can't be it. I hope that this is not the rest of my life where I go to work at a job, work all day, every day, and then there's nothing else to life. And so that actually kind of made me start looking outside the box, and farming kind of was the answer. Another reason why I started looking into farming was that my family was really, really unhealthy and overweight. And I wanted to know why, and particularly the community, the Black community, everyone was morbidly overweight. They had a lot of health related issues that were related to food, and why I never saw any farmers that looked like me. And so after I left Boeing, I went and worked at Whole Foods Market. This is before they were owned by Amazon. I worked at Whole Foods, and I thought that it would bring me a little closer to my food sources. And in many ways it did, but it also didn't. And so what happened was I started working, I took a class, excuse me, no, I started working at a raw dairy farm on the weekends. And this was my first real access to farming. And I saw that they were looking for someone to help on the weekends, and I sent an email, and they were like, yeah, come this Saturday. And I was like, don't you want to, check my background? Or like, no, anyone that wants to work on weekends, we're happy to have them. So I went to this raw dairy farm, and I started just working my way up from the bottom. And that was literally scooping a lot of cow poop. Keeping the cow stalls clean. It was feeding the chickens and the ducks, and carrying a lot of water to make sure all the animals had water, as well as collecting eggs and washing eggs. So it's just very basic chores around the farm. And that farm suggested that I do a class, which is offered by WSU here in Washington, and it's called Cultivating Success. And so this class was like a night class that I did once a week, and it really just kind of laid the groundwork as to what the different avenues of farmers were. They had guest speakers of different farmers that talked about their operations, and really just like very bare basics of what farming could be. And from that, the instructor of the class, who is still one of my friends today and in my network, recommended that I do a full season internship on a farm. And I began what was a 2-year process of applying to internships. And in those 2 years of applying, I got denied and denied and denied after of many different farming internships. And I would get denied for reasons. Usually it would be because I was overqualified. And I just thought to myself, I was like, well, people change their careers all the time. So why is it that I'm overqualified to go, work on a farm? Another reason why I would get denied was because I was too old. And then another reason I got denied was because I wouldn't fit in. And so, like, what does that mean? I won't fit in. And so, you start questioning things about your identity and race and other like stereotypes that would make you not fit in with a certain group of people. And then the last reason why I would get denied from internships was because I was underqualified. And that one probably hurt me the most because to say that you're underqualified for an entry level job is kind of hard to understand, where internships are actually made and created so that people can get that experience without having experience. And so, anyways, I got denied for about 2 years and applied to numerous different places across Washington State. And finally, I got a yes. I got a yes. And it's the farm that I ended up being at for the past 3 or 4 years, called Willowwood Farm, which is located on Whidbey Island. Now, I was looking for small farming operations to work at, so I was thinking like 5 acres or less. And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's a small farm, so come on out for an in-person interview." And I showed up on a 20-acre property. And apparently 20 acres is like the largest you could be and still be considered a small farm, at least here in Washington. And so I was like, this is not a small farm. And I didn't really know, what to expect or anything like that, but it was the only opportunity that I had. And I said, I'm going to go ahead and dive in nose first and take this opportunity. And it actually worked out to my benefit. I just want to clarify, one of the reasons that I looked for jobs in particularly farming jobs in rural areas is because at that time I felt like, as a person of color, as a Black woman, that urban farming was the only kind of outlet that Black people were allowed to be in. And I wanted to step outside of my element of comfort and learn larger agricultural skills. I wanted to learn how to drive a tractor. I wanted to learn, I don't know, how to bale hay and all these different things that you can't really do in an urban setting. And so that's why it was really important for me to find something in a rural landscape. So when I got the opportunity to work at a diversified mixed vegetable farm, I went ahead and jumped on that opportunity because I was afraid that no one else would give me a chance. And so I ended up on Whidbey Island, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know what a seed was. I didn't know what a transplant was. I didn't know that you had to water your little seedlings every single day. And no wonder, because I had tried to grow some at home and they died. So I really learned a lot in my first year of a small scale agricultural skills, from seeding to transplanting to driving a tractor to taking care of animals such as chickens and pigs. And here are some pictures of myself around the farm, and my family, who often joins me on the farm as well, are here in some of these pictures as well. And then again, I love driving tractors. That's probably my favorite thing, and I hope that more people learn how to drive tractors, because it seems like, I don't know, maybe like a dying skill, particularly like the older ones, like the really, really old tractors. Um, so I worked my way up working at this farm for over the past 3 years. I started off like as an intern, not knowing anything. The second season, I took on more of a leadership role, working in the wash pack station and making sure that customers got the right order that they were supposed to be getting. And then the third year, I took on the role as farm manager as well as harvest manager. And so those are two very demanding roles. And I took them on, and it was a really great season. And I learned a lot as far as my farming skills and capability. See what's next. I'll just say this. One of the things that is really challenging in farming, and particularly being a woman and being a Black woman, is the fact that you're constantly questioned on your skills and knowledge. And so I had a lot of challenges as farm manager as to my ability to know how to do something. And particularly from a white male who thought he knew more than me. So I had to really do some soul searching and think about what I wanted to do in farming and what was next. Um, so then, and then I'll continue that story as to what was next, because I'll get there, because what was next was what brought me to Calypso Farm and Alaska. But you know, during my path of farming, I ended up doing a lot of public speaking as well. My first public speaking opportunity was at Food Tank, and Food Tank had an inaugural summit here in Seattle, and they asked me to come speak about food policy. And I was like, I'm just a farmer. I don't know anything about policy, but policy affects me directly. And so that's what I could speak to. And I had a wonderful opportunity of speaking with an amazing panel of people that are involved in the policy system. This conversation that I had with Food Tank also opened up doors where I got connected with the National Young Farmers Coalition, which is a national organization of advocacy for young farmers. I've also had the chance to speak at other conferences. We have here in the Pacific Northwest, we've had a yearly Black Farmers Gathering as well. And so it's just really kind of opened my door to being able to connect with more people and different platforms. Okay, so as I mentioned, my last year of farming here in Washington at Willowwood Farm, I faced a really big complex and dilemma as to whether or not I was good enough to be a farmer. And I ultimately decided that I wasn't a good farmer because the people around me had kind of like belittled and diminished my skills and knowledge so much that I decided that I was going to go to farm school. And so I looked up several different farm schools, and I found one in Alaska, of all places. And I was like, oh, farm school in Alaska. I've never been to Alaska before. But really what intrigued me about the program in Alaska at Calypso Farm was some of the diversity that they offered in their program. I had at that point 3 years of agriculture experience of how to grow and harvest plants, but they offered some things in their program that many other farm schools don't offer, which is why I look to them. And so at some point, I just decided I was going to pack up my little car and drive to Alaska. And that is exactly what I did. And fortunately, I have an amazing aunt who actually made a contribution to me to take the Alaska Marine Highway. So that was a great 3-day experience. And then when I got off the ferry, I still had about a day's journey. And I arrived in Alaska and it was snowing. And I had this little cabin that became my home for the next 5 months while I was in Alaska. And so just here's some of the scenery of Alaska while I was there. If you haven't been to Alaska, I know a lot of people here are from Alaska, but if you have not been to Alaska, it is one of the most beautiful places in the United States that I have been to outside of Hawaii. And I say that you have to go to Alaska. It's just like untouched. And as I was driving, there would be like bears or like rams or bison on the highway. And it's just this magnificent, wonderful animal like landscape. It's just beautiful. This is actually the Denali Park. And the flower at the bottom is one of my favorite flowers. It's the fire seed, right? Is it the fire seed?
Fireweed.
Firewood.
So
Thank you.
yes.
Fireweed. Thank you so much. And I actually just found out that there are some populations of that here in Washington. But what I really like about it, and I'll talk about this a little more, is that it's a great plant for natural dyes. Okay, and so then this is just some of my time while in Alaska with my cohort of other students. We did all sorts of things. Like I said, what attracted me to the program in Alaska was some of the other skills, like spinning wool, learning how to use a chainsaw, and a hatchet as well. The hatchet was probably my favorite, as well as learning how to do blacksmithing skills, and it was just uh, a whole array of different skills that this program offered that many other farm schools didn't offer. And as a farmer, you have to be very diverse in your skills to be able to sustain yourself. You don't want to always have to call someone to fix something or build something for you or fix an engine. And so the Calypso program, with all of the diversity of offerings, really helped me kind of expand my farmer knowledge. And so here I am learning how to shear a sheep for the first time. Tom, thank you for picking the biggest sheep for me to shear on my first attempt. Other things that I learned were how to use different power tools, how to do small engine repairs. We built a log cabin while we were there, and that was a team effort, but wow, I mean, I can say I built a log cabin. I never thought I'd be able to put that on my list of things to do. And the mosquitoes in Alaska are huge. I think I still have bites today. I mentioned, as well as part of my time in farming, is my work with the National Young Farmers Coalition. I recently just became a board member, and I've been a member of the National Young Farmers Coalition since they helped counsel me for my food tank conference that I was telling you about earlier. And I've had the opportunity to travel to DC on several different occasions to lobby for the Farm Bill appropriations that help young farmers. And so during my time in Alaska, I got called to fly to DC, and I had the chance to represent the state of Alaska and the state of Washington. So you see me here with Don Young and Lisa Murawski of Alaska, and then also of Washington State, we have Senator Patty Murray and Representative Kim Schreier. Another thing that we did while we were there at some point was, at the time, I think Purdue was the USDA representative, and we had a chance to sit down with him and have an audience. And hopefully soon I'll be having a conversation with Vilsack later. That there's some arrangements happening for that. And so really, the work of the National Young Farmers Coalition is to get in front of our state representatives and have conversations with them and let them know that this is what young farmers look like and this is what young farmers need. And our needs sometimes are a little bit different from large scale agricultural needs. So it's just a really great opportunity to share our stories with our state representatives as well. Okay, and then what also brought me to Alaska was the sheep and the fiber. I am a huge fiber advocate. I love natural dyeing. I love working with fibers. Alaska has some amazing textiles. I had a chance to go to both Kiviat farms while I was there and see the muskox. I've never heard of a muskox before, but I just am in love with this amazing creature. And so some of the things that I'm working on now is creating my own farm called Ebony by Nature. And the focus of Ebony by Nature is a fiber arts farm as well as seeds. And so I grow natural dye flowers and dry them to utilize them for natural dyes. And then I also do my own handcrafted spun yarn from wool and other cellulose and protein fibers. And I'm working on doing some more seed work as well. So this past year, I had the opportunity to take an internship through the Organic Seed Alliance, and they partnered me with a farm here on the island called Deep Harvest Farm, where I learned all aspects of growing seeds. Now, you would think you know how to grow vegetables, you know how to grow seeds, but they are two completely different things. And to be able to spend a year learning how to do this seed work was really amazing. And I look forward to offering more seeds. Right now, I just have Rockwell beans, which is like a native bean here to Whidbey Island. So, but I'm hoping in the coming months to steward some different seeds. So some of the projects that I'm working on right now, I did the collard variety trial. So we had a few different organizations come together, and they sent out seeds from 20 different varieties of collards. A lot of these varieties are rare and almost extinct because a lot of people that aren't from the South are not very familiar with collards. And collards are actually more hardy than cabbage. And they're similar to kale in many different ways. And so really what this project was about was to kind of share the stories of these seed savers who carried these seeds for generations, and also get people excited about collards. And so I hope all of you put collards on your planting this year. And I'd be happy to make some recommendations of some different varieties that we trial that you will have access to purchase. Not all varieties are available for purchase due to the limited seed stock. So the next part of this project that I hope to participate in is some of the regeneration of some of these rare and almost forgotten seeds. I'm currently working with the Organic Seed Alliance. And the Organic Seed Alliance is based here in Washington. It's just actually, it's just over the water from where I'm located, actually, in Port Townsend. And so I work with them. And right now what we're doing is we're working on creating a BIPOC kind of seed collaborative to help people of color get into or help them with any seed skills that they might need. I hope to officially launch Ebony by Nature. I've been working on my website for like a year now. And when you live in a rural space, some of you guys might know, internet is very limited. And so I'm hoping now that I have actually really good internet to finally get my website done. And then coming in May of 2021, there will be an article about the heirloom collard trial that I participated in and some of the results and history and information. So I'll be happy to share that with Calypso Farm, and maybe they can send that out to y'all if you are interested. I wish I could share it with you now, but I can't until it's published. Okay, so I just want to take a quick moment. I use this term a couple times while I was speaking, is just mention what BIPOC stands for. And BIPOC, if you're not familiar, it stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. It's not all monolithic. We're not all monolithic. So that's why it's more of just a way to kind of talk about diversity within certain communities. And I kind of want to just, talk about the reason why these conversations are so important, and it's because BIPOC voices are often excluded and silenced from mainstream media and social media and so forth. And so now what I want to do is I want to take a few minutes and ask y'all all a question. So I am going to pop out of the screen share, and I'm going to put a link in the chat that will direct you to a Google Doc where you will be able to interactively answer a question. So, oops, I sent it to not the right thing. Okay, let's try this again. All right, can you all see that link? I'm gonna give you all about 5 minutes to go to that link, and there's some sticky notes. And in those sticky notes, you are going to answer the question, how do you amplify BIPOC voices? And this could be either personally or in your working environment, or how you hope to amplify BIPOC voices moving forward. I'm loving some of these answers coming through. Thank you, everyone who is participating. So much activity. Thank you, everyone. If you've already have filled out one of these sticky notes, in the bottom right-hand corner, there are a bunch of little stars. And what you can do is if somebody else wrote something that resonates with you or that you would like to see yourself doing more or your organization doing more, go ahead and grab one of those stars and put it on a sticky note that really resonates with you. Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm just going to give y'all all maybe one more minute to wrap up the thought that you're working on, and then I'm going to make this full size so that everyone can see and read. And I just want to make time for Q&A at the end. All right. So there are many different ways to support BIPOC people, and I think you know, everything that I see here, whether it's from listening to supporting businesses, stepping out of the way, resources for BIPOC and initiatives. There's a lot of really great stuff. So I just really wanted everyone to kind of see how different people are doing different things to help amplify BIPOC voices. Some of you might have seen, if you're on social media, have seen different kind of blackout days and things like that to really help share the voices, and just changing your social media feed as well. That's a very powerful way to help amplify voices as well. And we can go over this a little bit more as we go through like the Q&A, but I want to hurry and wrap up here so that we can we have some more time. Hold on one second. Okay. getting lost here in Zoom. I gotta share my screen again. Okay. So some last things that I wanted to share with you is how you can support me. You can support me by following me on social media. I have two social Instagram handles. You can reach me at Ebony by Nature or Melbell206, or you can follow me on both. You can turn into my podcast. I actually have a podcast that I do with the Female Farmer Project. It's called Cultivating Culture. And we sit down with Black women and other BIPOC women, and we talk to them about their farming experiences. There's 4 episodes out right now. And the last episode that we just released earlier this month was with Karen Washington. And so it's a very powerful conversation. And then if you tune into the podcast, please give us a like, because that helps us improve our ratings. And if you'd like to purchase a t-shirt, and the t-shirts purchase helps support the documentary that Audra, who is my producer and co-host, is working on. You can make a monetary donation to me as well to help support my growing season. I have a PayPal, which is here. And that donation will help me purchase soil amendments, tools, and equipment and seeds, and many other things that are needed to run a successful farm. And then another thing you could do is pre-order this book. It's called We Are Each Other's Harvest by Natalie Bazile. It will be available on April 6th. And Natalie traveled to Alaska during my time in Alaska to interview me as one of the profiles on this book, in this book. I think she's with us today in the audience. Hi, Natalie, thanks for being here. And if I have the dates correct, I think I'm gonna be joining her on a panel discussion in April, later in the month when the book is released. And we can provide more details for that as that comes available. And so, and Natalie is also one of the people on my podcast as well, one of my guest speakers in my podcast. So I just really want to take this time and open the floor up to questions. Y'all have been great listeners. It's hard to share my life journey in just a few minutes, but somehow I did it. So Christy, let's see, I'm gonna stop sharing and see. I want to see all your beautiful faces. If you have a question, you can put your hand up if you know how to do the put your hand up icon, or you can type your question into the chat. And Christy's going to help navigate if there's any questions in the chat that came up while I was talking.
We do have one, Mel. Says, could you talk a bit more about the Young Farmers Coalition, like what it is? And
absolutely. So the National Young Farmers Coalition is an organization of advocacy. And so we do a lot of like lobbying, training people how to speak with their representatives. There's usually an annual conference as well that is, I mean, like the conference could be like a whole, a lot of different things. But essentially the main purpose of the National Young Farmers Coalition is to change policy to help support young and beginning farmers. A lot of policy that you'll see in the Farm Bill is for conventional farmers. So there's a lot of subsidies and things like that for conventional farmers that don't actually help people that are farming on smaller scale. We're talking 1 acre, 5 acres, and things like that. So really trying to change policy to help those farmers. There's also, we'll do, right now, the National Young Farmers Coalition is kind of going through a lot of equity changes, making sure that when the coalition was originally created, it was from a very white lens and didn't really help people of color. So how now moving forward, we can help farmers of color of all backgrounds. So there's a lot of policy work that we do within the organization. I hope that answers your question. You can actually check out their website. I can put the link in the chat. And then if there's another question, I'll find the link and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, we have another one here. Oops, I lost it. Hang on a second. How did I lose it? Hang on a second. I can't go. There we go. Okay, here we go. Sorry. We're getting a lot of thank yous for, okay. Can you describe any particular moments or events when you felt fully connected to your life choice to become a farmer?
Oh, that's a great question.
That's good.
That's a really good question. I will say personally, I'm still struggling with my choice to become a farmer, because I still am kind of struggling with the identity of what a farmer looks like. I mean, just recently I was looking at a piece of land and the owner was like, well, we don't have any farmers, so we shouldn't do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, but I am a farmer. So there's also like a lot of financial barriers that comes with farming. I mean, like, you know, you buy a lot of your supplies at the beginning of the year, and sometimes you, as a seed farmer, especially, you don't get paid until the end of the year. So there are financial challenges that come along with that. And then I think here in Washington specifically, where good viable land is, sometimes is in very rural conservative areas. And so, you know, you're kind of putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation to be in some of these extremely conservative areas. So there's a lot of things that make me think like, oh, maybe this isn't the best path. COVID hit, and I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And so I think that it's an ongoing kind of question, and then kind of have to reassure myself like, oh, you're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing, Mel. So I'm still learning, and I hope that at some point in the very near future, I will have a definite answer. I saw a question about the young farmers from, it says, I wonder if there is ever other Alaskan delegates. To my knowledge, there's no chapter in Alaska, which is why I ended up going as a representative of Alaska. So if there are people in Alaska, young people that would be interested in joining the National Young Farmers Coalition, I'd be happy to be a liaison for you to help build a chapter. And just get connected with the right people that can walk you through that process. And even if you don't want to form a chapter, if you yourself want to get involved in policy through the National Young Farmers Coalition, we could always use more people from Alaska. When I was there, we had a lot of people from Canada, because this was during the 2-week intensive. That seemed really interesting. And I was like, well, I don't know if that affects US politics or not. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to connect you with the young farmers.
We got what are your favorite dye plants?
Oh, my favorite is marigolds. I just love marigolds. I just like everything about them just makes me smile. So I would say probably marigolds and indigo, because indigo is of the kind of Black and African diaspora. It was actually one of the most, it was more, indigo during the indigo trade was more valuable than slaves at the time, until they came up with synthetic blue dyes. So I want to reclaim indigo and have that part of my life.
That's great. When you were looking at farm schools, where did you find the information?
Great question. Well, I'll just say one, there's a farm school like about 30 minutes away from me here on the island that for diplomatic reasons, I'm not going to talk about right now. But I knew of another farm school in California, and then somehow, maybe like while I was searching, I think that it, like, you know how like Google can like read like they have algorithms and they know what you're looking for. So somehow I think in my Instagram feed, Calypso Farm popped up and it was like a farm school. And I was just like, what? Farm school in Alaska? I was like, what can you grow in Alaska? It snows there. It's night, like 24 hours of the day. And the more and more I looked into it, I was like, oh, I was like, this program looks super cool. And I also chose this program, I will say, because it was significantly less expensive than a lot of the other programs. So it was definitely an affordability thing. But I would say that affordability was like, even if it was more expensive, I would have figured out a way to pay for this program because it just really fit into what I was looking for at the time.
Favorite farming memory? What is your favorite farming memory so far?
Yeah, let's see. I think my favorite farming memory is typically in the fall when you turn around and you look at all of the abundance and all of the beauty and you're like, I did that, or I had a part in that. And I think that's my favorite farming memory is like every fall just looking at the abundance and knowing that people are being fed because of you and having really great meals. So I think, and just sharing, just like cooking with my friends. I have quite a few friends on here and we just like to cook together, and that's always such a joy as well.
Okay. Youth engagement in farming and agribusiness has been challenging these days. How did you get into farming at an early age? And is it necessary to be an agricultural student to be a farmer, in your view?
That's a great question. I don't think you need to be an agriculture student. And I think in order for farming to survive, we have to look at more, or uh-oh, get a little feedback. We have to look at more like fields to get more farmers. So I think, one, the culinary field is a great field to start in because we're already connected with food, but also even the medical field. We're starting to see more doctors that are prescribing different vegetables and different diets that will help with different illnesses as well. So I think we need to branch out to be able to make sure that farming stays a great occupation for people, young people.
Can you talk about climate change and the things you and other small farmers are making to address climate change?
That's a great question. Climate change is real. I've seen it since I've been farming here on Whidbey Island. We've seen significant changes, whether it's either extreme droughts or big freezes. It doesn't really snow that much in this part of Western Washington, but the last couple of years we've been getting a lot more snow. I had a farmer friend it's the Nash's Organics. They lost thousands of pounds of food. And they didn't lose it necessarily to the climate, but it was more like the effect of the climate on the migrating seafowl that couldn't find food because it was so cold and frozen and covered in snow that they could only see the tops of his his purple sprouting broccoli, and they demolished the whole crop. So we are seeing a lot of changes. And what am I doing? Or what was the question? What was the second part of the question?
Yeah, like what are you and farmers doing?
Oh, geez. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I mean, regenerative agriculture is one of them. One of the things that I learned in Alaska is the value of water. I really took water for granted before I came to Alaska, not knowing that you have to go to a water station to get water there. So I think that there's a lot of things happening right now in regenerative agriculture to really address some of the climate issues. That's pretty much what I'm familiar with right now. I don't have any specifics on that answer. I'm sorry.
Okay, two last questions. One about fiber animals. What fiber animals do you raise or do you hope to raise? And then what do you want to say to encourage young Black farmers as they get started?
So for the fiber animals, I really, really want sheep. I really, really, really want sheep. That's all I can say. Any sheep, but not Icelandic. Any sheep but Icelandic. Any other sheep. I really want sheep. I love them. Also maybe some mohair goats. I would love some of those as well because they're so cute and shiny. Um, and possibly some Angora rabbits. And actually the farm that I mentioned I've been working at for the past several years raises Angora rabbits. And then the last question, what was the last question, Christy? Oh, how do I encourage, what do you want to say to encourage Black farmers to get started?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think usually what I say to a lot of Black farmers, particularly because there's this association that farming is slave work, and really we need to dismantle that thought. Before we were slaves on American farmlands, we were great agriculturalists in our homeland on the continent of Africa. So I think the first is recognizing that we were brought here to America for our agricultural skills. And so we need to be able to reclaim that for ourselves to be able to sustain ourselves and our families. So that's like usually what I say to people who might be like, oh no, I don't want to farm. I don't want to get dirty. And I think sometimes it's just exposure. You know, a lot of Black young youth and they live in the city. And so they're just not really exposed to like soil and you know, putting your hands in the soil or taking your shoes off and, you know, rubbing your feet around in the grass. So I think it's also the exposure. And a lot of times when we get youth out to the farm, then they have a great experience. How much time do we have, Christy? Do we have any time left? No? Oh, okay.
You should go for it.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you all for being here. I hope that this was everything that you were looking for. I think, you know, she doesn't know it yet, but Natalie, you should be the next conversation and talk about the book that you wrote. Do you want to pop on for a sec, Natalie?
I was trying to just be in the background, Melanie, but just congratulations. I just want to say it's such a pleasure to see you and to see the folks from Calypso Farms, where I had a chance to visit. And I'm so proud that Melanie is in the book. We tell her story as part of the story of Black farmers in this country. So Melanie was one of the first farmers I interviewed, and she was just so generous during my visit. And I felt very welcomed, and yeah, she was great. So if you get the book, you get to see a beautiful picture of Mel and read her story. So thanks.
Thank you.
Natalie, we had somebody asking if you have a preference of where people can pre-order.
You know, I mean, you're welcome to support your local bookstores. I think that's a great idea. If you want to kind of do a double whammy and find a Black bookstore in your neighborhood, that's even better. The book comes out on April 6th, so you have, I don't have one in particular that I'm thinking of, but you know, I'm all in favor of indie bookstores. So if you want to do that, that'd be great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. Well, it's been so great having you all. Thank you, Calypso Farm. Thank you, the Folk School. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. I look forward to possibly having another conversation with you all. See where my journey takes me.
Thanks, Mel. And thank you everybody for, again, for joining us tonight. We'll be sending out some information in the next couple of weeks about our next speaker and the date for that sometime in March. So be on the lookout, and we hope you'll join us again.
Good night.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, Christy.
Yeah, see you soon. Thanks,
Yes.
Calypso.
Thank you, Mel.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Susan.
It's so good to see you.
I know. I hope we get to see each other in person soon. Hi,
Oh,
Kay.
me too. Me
Hi,
too.
Kay. Kay, I'm doing my Hannah! Oh my gosh, Hannah! Hi! How are you?
Hi, Hannah.
Are you still in Washington?
Oh,
What?
I know. We're in Northern California now.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Thanks for tuning
So
in.
good to see you. Good to see all of you. Yay.
We got the whole Calypso team here.
Pretty cool. Thanks so much, Mel.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Mel, you got a couple of requests for people interested in collards, specifically for Washington area. And then you also got a couple of requests for people that want to come visit you.
Oh no. That's probably like the one request the most. And I'm like, oh no, like how do I have all these people out to the farm? Like right now during COVID, like, cause I want to have everybody out, but I can't. But yeah, okay, we'll figure something out.
That's great.
All right, should we sign off then?
Sure.
All right.
Thank
Signing
you
off.
so much.
Oh, thank you for hosting this. I had a great time. I didn't know what I was going to talk about, but like I had to sit there and think about it, and I think I figured it out.
You did an
You did
amazing job.
great. It
It
was
was so good.
awesome.
There's a lot of people like really excited about the recording too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of my East Coast family were like, we can't make it. They have to be up
Yeah.
early. So I'm
Yeah.
happy. Actually, my older sister was in the chat, so I was really excited to see her.
Oh,
in here.
good.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Good. Hi,
We had
Daisy.
someone all the way from Nepal.
What?
Yeah.
No way.
Me and all the
Yeah.
way.
There you go. There's a line on some sheep, Mel.
I see. I know. Okay, so I just need to get my land. I need to get my land situation situated. So I'll have to update y'all on the current situation. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
Definitely.
it's a good situation. So
Good, good.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, Carrie, also for co-hosting this.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for including the folk school. We really appreciate it. That was great.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, we appreciate it too.
All right, everyone. Signing off.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks, Mel.
Daisy. Thank you.
Thank you.